Well, we're at Loughmacrory here this evening. We're having a chéile to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Drumnakilly martyrs. Gerard and Martin Bryan were killed in action 30 years ago at Drumnakilly in action by the SAS. And we gathered here this evening to remember them. This is the community where Gerard and Martin came from. They were footballers here in the local football team. They're very much involved in the local community, and Bryan is also very, very well known in the community as well. And we're absolutely thrilled to have Gerry Adams here with us this evening. We have a packed crowd here. It's going to be a night that is going to be very nostalgic. It's going to be sad, but also be full of pride and full of emotions. So we're really looking forward for tonight, and so happy to have Gerry here. Gerry done the oration at the graveside of the two volunteers, Gerard and Martin, 30 years ago at their funerals, and it's absolutely delightful that we have them back here tonight on their 30th anniversary year.
We will now have our guest speaker for this evening. Gerry was here 30 years ago this August at the graveside of Gerard and Martin with Martin McGuinness. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome Gerry here this evening to the Lough. I don't think he needs much of an introduction, so without further ado, give a big Loughmacrory welcome to Gerry Adams.
Muy buenas, agus tá buig des body goharaha fahanyan a couple of formal flahul Sinn agus tá haran han sas to the lepsha agus mar dirt body be man shaw trahablean o hin ag bug na surgery na lakery kroga shaw Gerard agus Martin agus again Toru the brand Foster. So Tommy, we're great. Dave Mar Dirt me agus Curran Falshamore Rova Lega agus go Haraha the chéile Kedmina Falsha the chéile na Hogre of our Bass. So I want to welcome all of you here this evening. I want to thank Paddy for our kind words of welcome, and it's a very special occasion. And I especially want to welcome the families of volunteers, Gerard and Martin Hart and Brian Mullen. And 3 weeks ago, I spoke at the commemoration in Loughmacrory for Seamus Woods. And just like this evening, it was a beautiful summer evening. The cemetery, as you may know, is on a hillside that looks down over the rolling hills of Tyrone, its glens, its winding lanes. As I stood there that evening, and as I travelled here this evening, I thought back to the time when this county was a battlefield. The IRA volunteers and the Republican people of Tyrone were in the front line of the struggle for national liberation. It was a lethal war of attrition, but it was also a political battle for the hearts and minds of people. And in their propaganda war, the British and their allies tried to label Republicans as criminals, as gangsters. It was the same propaganda war that the Brits had fought and lost in countless freedom struggles in former colonies across the world. It was a propaganda battle which they decisively lost during the 1981 hunger strikes. And that event had a huge impact on Gerard and Martin and Brian. They were inspired and they were moved by the extraordinary courage of Martin Herschel from Kappa, whose anniversary was 2 weeks ago on July the 13th. And I want to welcome Sir Clark, who's here somewhere, the Sinn Féin candidate, the Sinn Féin candidate from Longford, Westmeath, and the contingent from that constituency, because that's where Martin stood in the famous prisoners' election, and it's good to see Republicans from that constituency up here with us in Martin County. I also want to commend the work of your MP, Orla Bagley, who replaced Barry recently, and particularly the success of our campaign to help that young fella Billy in recent days. So well done, Orla, for to thank everyone who works for the Irish cause. No matter how small it is, no matter how limited you might think it is, it's really, really crucially important. And Gerard and Martin and Brian were also enthused by the selfless bravery of Kevin Lynch and Kieran Doherty, whose anniversaries occur next week. And sometimes when I come to speak at an event like this, and when I hear the Roll of Honour, the long list of young people mostly, or at an event like this when you think of, for example, the lads who were killed at Loughmacrory just before these volunteers were killed, it can be overwhelming. Just the sheer sacrifice, the numbers of people. But let's be very, very clear about this, those of us who survived. The relatively small number of Tyrone IRA volunteers, supported by many others, were never defeated by the British Army. In its efforts to win, the British state used torture, brutality, engaged in a widespread campaign of harassment and intimidation of an entire community. It sponsored state collusion with unionist death squads. And it was faced with strangers, paid assassins, who cut down Gerard and Martin and Brian on the long bog road at Drumnakilly 30 years ago. And in the days that followed, their families, their friends, and the people of this proud Republican heartland were subjected to the vicious threat of red-clad, heavily armed British soldiers and the RUC. Hundreds of British troops were ferried into this area in giant Chinook helicopters. They surrounded and they put the family homes and all of the mourners under siege. And the funerals were deliberately delayed. And when they eventually took place, and many of you were probably here at that time, British forces spread along the entire funeral route. They scrambled over fences and ditches. They jumped over trains in an attempt to intimidate and hem in the mourners. And at Brian Mullen's funeral, the British Army cut farmers' fences to make a pathway to move along with their war dogs. Thousands upon thousands of Tyrone people attended the two funerals. By their presence and the dignified manner in which they expressed their solidarity with the Hart and Mullen families, the Republican people of Tyrone demonstrated their defiance and their repudiation of British actions. I did have the honour of speaking at the graveside of Gerard and Martin. I said then, it is a natural order of things that parents grow old and are buried by their sons and daughters. But it's becoming the order of things in this part of Ireland that it's parents who are forced to bury their sons and daughters, while young orphan children and widows stand mourning at the graveside of young people cut down in their prime. And that pain, the immediacy, that sense of loss is felt directly after a death. But it doesn't go away. And even, as I've said before, on occasions like this, as we celebrate the courage of our patriot dead, that sense of loss doesn't fade. And over the years, particularly family members may learn to cope, may learn to carry on with their lives, but don't think for one moment, for 1 second, that we forget. So to the family of Gerard and Martin, to their widows, Roisin and Breeds, and their sons Colin and Declan, to Gerard and Martin's brothers and sisters, Teresa, who's in San Francisco, Sean in Toronto, working in support of our cause, Nishi, who helped to organise this event, and his wife Becky, and to the late Kathleen Hart's husband Pat and their children, you have our gratitude and our heartfelt thanks. And to Brian's family, to his mother Sissy and his brothers and sisters and all his nieces and nephews, I want to extend once again, on my own behalf and above it the Irish Republican family, our love and our solidarity. I also want to welcome John McAnespy, who's here, the father of Aidan, who was shot dead by the British Army, and family members of volunteer Seamus Woods who are with us also. In my remarks at the graveside 30 years ago, I also said, these young men were not motivated by hatred. They were motivated by a nobler sentiment. They were killed by hate on the orders of Thatcher. These three young men were good, decent, patriotic freedom fighters driven to fight for justice. So there'll be no voice of hatred here. We leave that to Tom King, to Maggie Thatcher, and to the Unionists. What we raise here today is a cry for peace, and we must ask also what peace is. Peace is freedom, peace is justice. Peace is the establishment of Irish sovereignty and the free exercise of national self-determination. Thatcher thinks that by sending in her hard killers to gun down these men, that she will crush the will of Irish people to resist her government's presence. She simply doesn't understand us. 30 years later, that is still true. Theresa May, Thatcher, and the ball of those who came in between. And what they don't understand, what they didn't grasp, was the essential truth that the men and the women of the IRA and those who supported them were decent men and women doing their best under difficult and dangerous circumstances. They were heroes. They loved freedom. Gerard and Martin and Brian were heroes. They loved freedom. All those on the roll of honour loved freedom, and they could never be defeated. British governments, with their belief in empire, cannot begin to understand the indomitable spirit that lies in the heart of Irish Republicans in County Tyrone. How many people here, on a show of hands, and don't tell lies, how many people here weren't born 30 years ago? Well, the reason I ask that, because 30 years later, though we live in peaceful times, or relatively peaceful times, I am sure that all of those younger people who put their hands up have that same spirit, that same sense, that same character, that same culture, that same inability to bow the knee or to in any way acquiesce to the fact that anyone would say that we're not Irish, that we don't deserve freedom, that we don't deserve the right to govern ourselves. So that's what the British government doesn't understand. The sense, the character of a people who have for centuries resisted invaders and remained rooted in your Irishness. And regrettably, there are those who peddle the propaganda lies of the past, who seek to criminalise, to insult, and to debase the struggle. And they want to exclude all narratives other than their own. And they want to force everyone to accept their version of history. So they challenge us, they say, we have no right to commemorate our great dead and to celebrate their lives and their courage and their self-sacrifice. But we have that right. We don't glamorise it, we don't glorify it, but we're very proud of our Republican patriot dead. We're very proud of their families. We're very proud of the achievements that we collectively have made. And we will respectfully commemorate and celebrate their lives, just as we accept the right of others to commemorate their dead. Because we know that those who commemorate the dead of the RUC or of the UDR or of the British Army they believed that their loved ones were right. And that's fair enough. I accept that. They're entitled to that opinion. But let me be clear. I believe that the IRA was right. That's my strong view. Not in everything that it did, but it was right to fight. And it was right also to make peace. And the war is over. It's history now. But the cry for freedom is still heard. And the struggle still continues. And that can be achieved by politically campaigning and building mass support for the end of the Union. Sinn Féin have come a huge way in recent years, and we've still more to do. What we've done so far isn't good enough, and I have every confidence in our new leadership, the Tyrone woman Michelle O'Neill and the Dove, Mary Lou MacDonald, that they will lead us confidently into a better future. And last week they met the British Prime Minister, her government's in a complete mess. The internal battle within her government, within her cabinet, the challenges of Brexit, the alliance between the DUP and the English Tories, they all present challenges, but they also present opportunities. And one of our big challenges is to secure and then to win a referendum on Irish unity. And to make sure that the Irish government, which dismisses this idea, keeps to its obligation to uphold the Good Friday Agreement, including a referendum on Irish unity. And it's my view that we will secure that referendum and that we will do our utmost to win it convincingly. So, the years of struggle, of heroism, of courage by IRA volunteers and those who helped them, that we celebrate tonight, the building of a strong, inclusive Sinn Féin, are all evidence of the ability of Irish Republicans to achieve whatever goals we have set ourselves. And we're no mean people. We acknowledge, we recognise that this has to involve also reaching accommodation with unionism. And we need to be thinking and trying to figure out how we can do that based upon equality. Our island is in transition. Society across these 32 counties is in transition, and Sinn Féin is in the leadership of that transition. So let's look to the future with confidence. Let's be assured of our ability to succeed. Let's consider all of what has been done in our own lifetimes. As Paddy has said, Gerry and Martin Hart were well-known members of Loughmacrory Co. GFC. And 4 years ago, Martin McGuinness joined Michelle O'Neill, who was then the Agriculture Minister, for the official opening of these new facilities. And his picture hangs proudly on the wall of this club. And Martin was very proud to represent Tyrone. He always knew once Gerry got knocked out that he could fall back in Tyrone. I don't know what he would do about the Tyrone Donegal match, because his mommy was from Donegal. But he once said, when change begins and we have the confidence to embrace it as an opportunity and a friend, and to show honest and positive leadership, then so much is possible. So 30 years after I stood with many of you and with the families of these volunteers at their graves, 30 years, let's be very clear, everything is possible. If we decide it, we stay united, we keep moving forward, we will live in freedom. And that's not least because of the sacrifice of the Hart and the Mullen families and their brave volunteers, Gerry, Martin and Brian. So, Gwyneri and Tal Lepsha are a Dúirt Mayor Dus, and which we're wake Deepsha. The very, very best of good luck to everyone here. Thank you all for whatever contribution you have made, and very, very best wishes for the future. Gura Míle Mágat.
absolutely overwhelmed by the support of the community here. 30 years on, you'd think that people would have forgot about them. Instead of that, it's getting stronger by the year. To see the amount of young ones here under 30 years of age that didn't know Gerard Martin turned out tonight is an unbelievable achievement. Such an achievement here from the football club, by the committee itself. Brilliant experience, and it's brilliant to have Gerry down here tonight, 30 years on in better times. Thanking Gerry for what he done, thank him for bringing peace to this country, and I really hope that everybody has a good night, and thank you very much for coming.
Well, tonight has been a very successful night, and the number of people that's here in Loughmacrory to remember volunteer Gerard Hart, volunteer Martin Hart and volunteer Brian Mullen shows how respected they were within their own communities, and their legacy lives on here within Loughmacrory Football Club, but throughout Tyrone and further afield. And tonight is a night to remember them, it's a night to celebrate their lives, and it's a night which shows that their legacy will live on for generations to come. And we see many young people here tonight that never had the pleasure of meeting them but want to be here to celebrate and remember their memory.